you reinventors. This is Lesley Jane Seymour, and I'm the founder of this podcast and also of CoveyClub.com. And if you are interested in creating change in your life, creating transition, creating reinvention, rethinking, retooling, rebooting, put the RE in front of any word you want. And that's what we're here for, is to help you figure that out and to give you the inspiration and the tactical advice on how to do it from people who have done it. That's the whole point. So today I have somebody who's really made a big change, a transition, literally. And I'm going to read you her bio. And I think her journey is so inspiring. And we have all faced moments where society doesn't like who we are or what we do. And how do you get beyond that? And it's not easy. And what you do is you speak out and you be yourself and you do good things for other people, and amazing things happen. So here is Wendy's story. Knowing from childhood she was a girl, Wendy yielded to familial and societal expectations to fit in. At age 67, okay, you can do this at any age. Remember, any age. Age is just a number. Wendy changed her life with her transition. Beginning in January 2015, she focused internally, accepting who she was, confronting fears, doubts, and anxieties that held her back for decades. She took the leap of faith to find freedom and joy in being herself. By July 2015, Wendy was living as a woman. She had her long-awaited surgery at NYU Medical in 2017. Wendy knows by focusing inwardly to find freedom and joy will benefit the rest of your life. As a transition mentor, Wendy Cole helps her clients identify, explore, and eliminate the stress of facing life's changes. Since 2017, Wendy has guided others to learn to embrace change. Her life experiences are the tools she uses. She believes in the mind's powers. She practices mindfulness, shifting her beliefs and energy to support herself going forward, making profound changes in her life, health, and finding joy in being. And here is the wonderful Wendy Cole. Hey, Wendy, so glad to have you on the podcast. This is great.
I'm so happy to be here, Lesley. It's a pleasure to meet you.
So tell me, where are you located?
I am in Providence, Rhode Island.
Providence, Rhode Island. Okay, cool. So let's start with your background. Where did you grow up? And, what did you do career-wise? What was your family situation? Very briefly, so people understand where you're coming from.
I was actually born in Jacksonville, Texas. I only was there for 3 months.
Okay.
And my mother took me to New York State, Newburgh, New York initially, but then I grew up in Fishkill, New York, about
Okay.
50 miles north of New York City, which was my playground in high school and college.
Okay, all right. A lot of people felt that way. Cool. And
And
what'd you do for work?
okay, I was fascinated with computers because of Star Trek and 2001 Space Odyssey.
Okay.
So after college, I went to college for history and political science. Um, After college, I went to a really top technical school in Dallas, Texas. Control Data Institute, Ross Perot. I got hired out of there by Digital Equipment Corporation, and that started my tech career in North Central Massachusetts.
Oh, okay, cool.
And
And
from
is
there, I
that what
went
you
to
stayed in? Yeah, go
from
ahead.
there, got transferred to New Hampshire, and then ultimately transferred to outside of Philadelphia, where I was laid off.
We've all been
And
through that. Yep.
almost 20 years of working for Digital Equipment Corporation as an employee. I worked my way up from being a technician to a project manager to doing sales technical support and all of that. 2 years of paid severance with full benefits. And I decided I don't want to be an employee anymore. I wanted to do contract consulting because I'd been in touch I'd come into contact, and that's with consultants, and that seemed to be a much better way to work.
Okay. So did you do
So
that for a while?
I did that for about another 15 to 20 years,
Oh my. Okay, cool.
and I loved it.
Okay.
I would walk into a corporation and I would be hired to develop a system for them, usually intranet based, that they could use globally. And I worked for companies like FMC, which is a big chemical company. I worked for Merck, and NEC, developing systems for them. And I only had one boss, the person who signed my contract every 3 months.
All right.
No
That's
office
pretty great.
politics. And I worked from home the majority of the time. I owned 2 Dell servers, a desktop, and a laptop so I could simulate the client environment, developing SQL Server databases and web-based applications in first of Visual Basic ASP, then .NET.
Wow.
All Microsoft technology, and I never really went to school for any of that. I bought books and taught myself. And
Okay.
I had imposter
Autodidact.
syndrome when I started because I was self-taught. Well, I found out that all the best programmers that I worked with and all the best developers that I worked with were all self-taught.
That's interesting.
It becomes a passion, something you immerse yourself into.
Right. So let's talk about your personal reinvention. How did that happen?
Uh, I was born transgender. This is not a choice. It's how
Right.
you're born. It develops within the second trimester. Your brain gets wired, your body develops, the sexual differentiation begins. My brain went female, my body went male. I told my parents by age 10, I'm a girl.
Yeah,
Didn't.
I know most people know that. I from working in the fashion business, I can tell you that everybody knew at age 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had a hint at it as 3 or 4, but I didn't have words to put around it. It just evolved and kept growing. And the closer I got to puberty, the more intense it got. So when I told my parents it was 1958, and of course this didn't go well.
I bet. 1958. Holy moly.
Christine Jorgensen had been in the newspapers in the early 1950s. She came back from World War II. So my parents took me to a psychiatric center where I sat with the psychiatrist and my parents. And of course, this is the 50s and children are
Right.
seen, not heard.
Right.
I was told, well, he told my parents, oh, this is just a little transvestism, boys
Right.
experiment. He's too young to diagnose as transsexual. And once he has a career, he has a wife, he has a house and a family, he'll forget all about being a girl. Much to my surprise, I spoke up and I said to the psychiatrist, I'm a girl. I was taken from the room.
Oh no.
Yeah, you know, the majority, we had like 4 or 5 sessions after that,
Hmm.
and I was only in them partially. It was all with my
Wow.
parents
Well,
and the
in the olden
psychiatrist.
days, they blamed the mother, right? So, oh, the mother was too domineering, and that caused,
I
se-
have no idea. They shared none of that with me at
oh
the
wow.
time, but I would imagine that was one of the things.
Right.
So, and my father was very conservative. During World War II, he was a lieutenant commander in the Navy. I found out over the course of the rest of my life all the lengths he had gone to have a son, to continue the family name.
Were you the
And
only son?
oh yeah,
Okay. Were there other
and
siblings? Did you have siblings?
I had one that I found out about when I was in grammar school. My half sister Carol, um, from my father's former marriage. And my father's former marriage actually went on for 8 years after I was born.
Oh,
There,
okay.
they didn't get divorced until 1956. I was born in 48.
Wow. Holy moly. Wow. Okay.
And uh, and I found out later on in 2001 when my father died that uh, I had a half sister that I didn't know about, and my mother didn't know about
Oh,
until
wow.
so. Um, he had actually tried in a year before I was born to have a son with his first wife. She had all my half sister Kathy had always been told through her lifetime, if you were born a boy, your father wouldn't have left us.
So he was really wrapped up in this. It's Henry VIII, right?
Exactly.
Wow. Oh my God.
So the next really pivotal point for me was senior year of college. I'm graduating. Um, Another major life change, getting into the world with a degree and all that other good stuff. So I had to do something about this. This was total turmoil inside me. I was depressed, so anxious. Suicidal ideations were
Right.
intense.
Very
Uh,
common.
so I found a psychiatrist who said he would help me. Um, I didn't know what the status was of my diagnosis or anything like that. Uh, he took me as a case study patient to a quarterly meeting of area psychiatrists. There was about 20 psychiatrists in the room in a hospital conference room, and I'm talking. The I get into it about 4 or 5 minutes into it. One of the psychiatrists stands up and says, "Well, I'll see you all next quarter." Looks at me and says, "You're a freak. You should move to New York
Oh,
City and turn tricks like the rest of them."
oh
This was
my.
1970.
In
That's
the
when I found out
70s.
also
Oh
that
boy.
my diagnosis was this is how you're born, there's no treatment and no cure. And that was the way the medical community, therapists, psychiatrists, doctors, you're basically written off.
Mm.
So I came to the realization that my only way to do this was to move to Manhattan, like the doctor had suggested, or San Francisco,
Right,
live
right,
underground.
right.
But I would never be part of society.
Well,
So I decided at that point, okay, basically suck it up and see what I can do to go forward without dealing with this. Um, and I did eventually got married in 74. I had my career started in 74. I got married a year left after I started my career. And 78, I told my wife, I was talking in my sleep. She woke me up. Uh, you're talking about being a woman. What's going on? I told her everything, figuring we'd be divorced by morning. For her own reasons, we stayed together as long as I didn't do anything about this. And that was still the 1970s in New York State, in California. I would be arrested for appearing in public
oh,
as a woman while assigned male at birth. And that's the other thing that a lot of people don't understand is gender is between the ears, not the legs. So
mm,
when a doctor announces, oh, it's a boy or it's a girl, at best it's a guess based on
mm,
physical anatomy. But
mm.
as that person develops, their gender identity, which is in the mind, really begins to develop. And there's a total incongruence there.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'd struggled through 40 years of marriage, my career, and everything, uh, repressing this.
Sure. Because that's what
And
you were told to do.
exactly. And you have no idea how damaging and how difficult repressing your real identity really is.
I can't imagine. I bet most people listening cannot even imagine what that's like.
And one of the things I ask people to kind of drive that point home is, when was the last time you looked in the mirror and said, oh, this is all wrong. This is not how I should be. People like myself face that on a daily basis. It
Wow.
ebbs, it flows, but it never goes away, and
Wow.
nothing you can do to change it.
Right.
Well, um, in 2014, late 2014, very dark time, lots of ideations coming through, making preparations to end everything. I decided I haven't looked in all these years to see if my diagnosis have changed, because I didn't want to. There was nothing I felt I could do about it. And um, if I looked and found that I hadn't changed, that would be just as bad as not knowing at all, was my attitude toward it. So I looked. I got on Google, I started doing searches, and I found out, wow, this is now something that I'm born with, and it's treatable. Therapy. I can actually talk to somebody. And hormone replacement therapy and any necessary surgeries.
So
That,
times had changed. That's what had changed.
yes, 2012 is when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And once I found out about that, I didn't hesitate. I went upstairs. I said to my wife, remember what we talked about in
Oh.
1978? She said, yeah. I said, well, it never went away. And I am going to find a therapist who will work with me, and I'm going to see what happens with this. I have to deal with this. I can't take it anymore. And I found a wonderful therapist. It took quite a bit of effort, but I found she was wonderful. At the end of our first session, where Lesley, I hadn't talked to anybody about my feelings and how I felt about myself in 45 years,
Oh
four
my
and a
God.
half
Yeah.
decades.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I sat there and I poured my heart out. It was an intake session, so it was a little bit longer. And it was just amazing. It just felt so good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I told her that, back in the 60s, I was a raging hippie. I was into Zen, meditations, all of that. So she said she wanted me to start journaling.
Mm.
And she also wanted me to get back into my meditations to control my mind, etc. And as I was leaving the office, I looked back to say goodbye, and she looked at me and she said, what's your name? And I snapped back, Wendy.
You knew.
Oh, Lesley, I picked that name in grammar school.
Oh.
She was the most popular girl in my class,
Oh.
wore the nicest clothes. Everybody loved her. And I said to myself, if I could ever be a girl, I was going to be Wendy.
And interesting when you think of Peter Pan,
I've
right?
made that comment before too.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So we went on from there. Um, I had no boundaries whatsoever with family, my wife, or anyone. I just knew what I wanted to do and what I needed to do. And by the second session, I told Stephanie, my therapist, I'm going to come next week as Wendy. Understand, I hadn't cross-dressed in over 30 years. I hated that. It reminded me of what I couldn't be and who I couldn't be.
Mm. Mm.
So the immediate relief that I would experience by dressing in feminine attire
Mm-hmm.
didn't cut it, because I had to take it off. I had to go back to my male facsimile, which is what I called him.
Why? What do you mean? Why did you have to go back? You couldn't get there? You weren't. w-
This was back like 30 years earlier or
Oh,
whenever.
I see. I see.
I
No.
just,
30 years earlier, you couldn't handle
yeah,
it.
I
Okay.
couldn't handle taking everything off. It hurt too
Okay.
much.
Okay.
So I just never wanted to do it again.
Okay.
Um, then I said to Stephanie, I said, you realize this is going to cause a boundary between my wife and I. There was a rule. If I did this, if I started dressing, I couldn't leave the house. No one could know about it. It was a big secret. Well, I'd had this big secret for decades, since
Right.
childhood.
Right.
And um, I wound up insisting, and I got dressed that Thursday morning and I went to therapy. And to prepare myself for it, for the 6 days before, I meditated. I visioned how would I feel. It was going to be end of January, beginning of February in Pennsylvania. So how would I feel with my overcoat on, looking like any other woman going to an office job?
Mm-hmm.
I'd hear the sound of my shoes going across the parking lot. I'd see my reflection in the glass door. How would all that feel? And it would feel wonderful. And I just focused my mind on those feelings, shutting down all the other thoughts that were going through there, all the doubts, all the fears of everything. And I'd been journaling, so I'd been typing um, single space, no punctuation, grammar concerns, or anything, and sharing those pages of my journal with Stephanie, my therapist, before each session, so she'd know where my thoughts were at.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd read what I wrote 4 days later and go, oh my God, I don't want to feel like that or think like that anymore. I walked into that, my third session, as Wendy. I couldn't have been happier. There were people in the waiting room. They didn't pay any attention to me. Everything was fine. And I'm going, wow, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can really be me.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept working on all my mindfulness, all my visions, journaling, shifting my beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
working to, okay, if I'm saying I can't do this, I start out by, I'm curious, what would it feel like if I did that? Something, because we can't live outside our beliefs. So I started shifting what my beliefs were. It, within about 3 or 4 months, oh yeah, I can definitely do this. I was so
Mm-hmm.
happy. And by the time I got to June, that's 6 months
Mm-hmm.
from the time I started.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I got to June, I was so happy. My wife said to me, you're really upsetting me. I'm worried about the future. We're going to get divorced. Um, you're going to go your way. I'm going to go mine. But you're just so happy. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm finally going to get to be me.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing she said was, well, my first husband left me for another woman. Now my second husband's leaving me to become a woman. We were both
At
laughing.
least she had a good sense of humor. That's good. I like that. That's
Oh,
actually really good. That's a
we
good
did
one.
divorce. It was when I announced that on March 4th, I was going to start hormone replacement therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, we're getting a divorce. I said, why? Knowing the answer. And she said, well, you're going to develop breasts. You're going, Lord knows what else you're going to do. So, and I'm not a lesbian and I'm not going to be married to a woman. So getting
Okay.
divorced.
All
And
right.
I said, okay. And I walked away. I went back to my
Okay.
office. I sat at my desk and go, oh, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it was.
Oh.
And we divorced amicably. We're still in touch. Um, for the pandemic year, we couldn't sell the house. So for the pandemic year, we still jointly owned the house. So I told her I was going to move back in, and I set up an apartment for myself in the basement. And that's where I lived for the next 2.5 years.
Wow.
And
So, so talk a little bit about what you do now, because you help other people who are going through this, correct?
yes, I do. What I discovered was because I did this in 6 months and was actually blending into the community where I lived, other
Oh, you stayed
people.
in the same community and they were willing to accept that?
Actually, what I did was I moved about 40 miles north of where my house was to a town on the Delaware River in central Bucks County called New Hope, Pennsylvania.
Oh, New Hope. I know New Hope. We had a house
Uh-huh.
in Califon, so we used to go out to New Hope a lot. We love New Hope.
Yeah.
That's a good space for you.
Well, I thought so too, and I figured, oh, the gay community is going to get me.
Yeah. No?
No, I found out they had almost as little understanding of being born this way and what it's all about as regular people do.
Oh, okay. That's a
Um,
surprise. I would not have
yep,
guessed that. Okay.
they saw cross dressers a lot who came into New Hope.
Right.
But people like myself who are going to be living full time as women and going for the surgery and completely changing their physical anatomy, um, not so much. So that's
Always a reason to reject somebody, isn't there? Like, that's what's so hilarious to me is,
even
and
with their own community.
right. Like there's just like, that's what you come to terms with, I think, as you get older, is that there's always going to be some reason. They just don't like the way you look at them. They don't like the color of your eyes. They don't, there's always some reason to I find human beings, I don't really understand why they like to, you know, just I don't know what they're looking for, but it's always something, right?
Well, I turned that into an extremely positive experience.
Awesome.
My first neighbors that I met, I lived in this neighborhood that was a mix of condos and apartments in Village 2, which you might be familiar with.
No, I don't know that, but
That's up the hill from right overlooking New Hope. Um, my neighbors, Chad and Jason, left flowers at my front door. Welcome to
oh,
the neighborhood, Chad and Jason, number 15.
oh, that's
So
nice.
I went to go introduce myself, and they weren't home. Sunday evening, they came in at about 8 in the evening. They'd been away. And so I went down around 9 o'clock, introduced myself. I found out there was a running bet in the neighborhood that, oh, is she cisgender or is she trans? I confirmed I transitioned. I don't know when, but I'm going to have the surgery and I'm living
Right,
full time as a woman.
right.
And oh, wow, you're really doing all of that? Yep. And
So
that's when I
interesting.
said it for the first time, Lesley. I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want to, and absolutely nothing is off limits. I've lived by that ever since. I would go to the gay bar and be talking with the guys and anybody else that came there. And um, the conversation would go like this, especially with the guys who had been married. Oh, you knew this at a very young age. You were gay. Yeah. Um, you got married. You repressed all of that. Yeah. Well, so did I. The only difference is you became a G, I became a T. That's it.
Mm, mm,
Let's go on from there.
yeah,
And we had great conversation. The gay community were my biggest supporters.
of
Loved
course.
them. And I had a blast.
That's great.
And I worked at the local supermarket uh, as a cashier. And the gay people that work there were rather surprised because, one, I never mentioned having transitioned in the job interview. It
Right,
was
right,
relevant to it.
right.
Um, and most of the women that I worked with in the front end of the store had no idea.
That's great.
And it was just a wonderful experience. And I've gone on from there to help people in transition. I've also started working with parents of transgender because
Oh, interesting.
they
Okay.
have no context by
Of
which to
course not.
understand this.
Of course not.
So I do a lot of educating with parents and helping them with what to do and what not to do.
So you're called a transition mentor, is that correct?
Correct,
And people
correct.
can hire you to help them understand how to get through this for themselves or for their kids. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Great. And where can people find you, Wendy? Where do they find your services?
The best way to connect with me initially is meetwendycole.com. That's meetwendycole.com. My
Okay.
calendar's there, my newsletter's there, and there's a link there that drops them back into my main website where podcast interviews are located, and there's everything else about me there.
And what are you finding today as the pressure is quite severe on trans right now? All this hysteria, all this repression. We're like, I mean, I have to say, I feel like we're in some weird retro thing. I mean, back to the 1864, these people want to go. How are you teaching people to deal with that? Just briefly, because we're almost at the end here.
Right. Um, First and foremost, the first thing that somebody in transition needs to do is change their beliefs in what is possible for them. Life is about possibilities. They have to change their beliefs in what's possible. If they don't do that, they'll never find self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is the key to getting through this and actually having fun and enjoying it. And once that happens, they're fine. What I'm finding with, I recently talked with someone who wants to hire me, but because of her personal circumstances, she can't right now, but I stay in touch and she's going to reach out and be back with me. She was just so panic stricken. They
Of
all
course.
hate us. They all
Of course.
despise us. And, you know, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do anything about this. And I just said to her, stop. Those are your own thoughts. From what I'm finding through what I'm doing, most people have no clue about us or what to think about us other than what they hear from some politicians and so-called religious people about how horrible we are,
Right.
while they use us as a wedge issue.
Right. Correct.
They can't use the gays anymore because that's more acceptable now. But
Right.
we definitely aren't.
Right.
So that's when I find once I start helping people get past what their thoughts are, what their beliefs are, and form new ones that are more supportive for themselves, they discover self-acceptance, they can actually move forward. I don't tell them how fast to go through. We'll develop a roadmap of all the steps and things that you need to personally do in order to complete this whole transition. But it's not a project plan. There's no dates on it. And one of the other things I personally learned, you'll do whatever you need to do when you're ready. There's no
Love that.
such thing as failing.
I love that. Well, on that, we're out of time, Wendy. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for helping people. And thank you for your story, because I think that will be very enlightening and helpful for other people who are going through what you're going through.
Thank you, Lesley.
So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Wendy, and I hope that you learned something that you can apply to your life. I certainly did. And I love the fact that she made her change at 67. I love that. It's never too late. Anybody listening who thinks that it's too late, until you are gone from this earth, it is not too late. That is my whole philosophy. So realize that you can be who you want, you can do what you want, you can change to what you want at any point in your life. And if you are looking for help during that, come on over to CoveyClub.com, where we have tons and tons of free guides and essays and checklists all about creating change in your life. We also have classes, master classes, challenges, all kinds of stuff that you can just pick up a class individually, or you can come join the wonderful women of Covey Club who support each other through transition and are the people that you call when you need a question answered. We also have the fantastic new Covey Club Marketplace, which is for people who have a business or a service that is intended for women 40 plus. And you can come talk right to them by joining our marketplace. You get not only to be a Covey Club member, but we circulate you and your business through the Covey Club site and through our newsletters and through our social media. And guess what? We like to do business with each other. Why go anywhere else? You want to actually do business with each other before you go to Upwork. I'd rather hire somebody, and I do, from Covey Club for everything I do. So check us out and also follow the podcast if you're interested, and share it with friends who might need help trying to figure out how to create change in their lives. And I'll see you next time.